Greetings. Welcome back to Beaver Branch Disc Golf Adventures. I'm Brian Morse, PDGA 16791. Today we have a plastic comparison for you. We're going to be looking at the Bolt. This is in the Opto plastic. I got this off from Dynamic Discs. And the 10-year anniversary edition here with the Orbit plastic. So it's a little stiffer, a little bit more, I guess, gold on the gold line side. So we're gonna see if there's a difference between the two plastics for this disc. The Bolt comes in at a speed 13, glide 6, turn of -2, and a fade of 3. Good look at it there. So we're gonna go check these things out. Shout out to my sponsor, Trilogy Talk. That is how I got the Orbit 10-year anniversary Bolt. I believe there are a bunch still available on the website. So if you like what you see here, that's where you need to go. All right, let's go take this to the field. All right, so here we have a look at the Bolt, Orbit Bolt on the right, and I busted out a Rive to compare it to so you can look at the difference in the rims there. You see the Rive is much higher, a very stable disc, at least for me. Bolt is an understable distance driver. And again, this is the 10-year anniversary, so this is pretty exciting for the Bolt, Latitude 64 Bolt. We're going to go Opto first, and these are going to be your standard heiser throws. And I'm throwing this at about 75-80% power. This is a very understable distance driver. The second one is the Orbit. My first impression, I did take these out and throw them one day before this, was that the Orbit was much more stable. Now I'm just finding it to be a little bit more stable. It is about 95 degrees out. This is an Opto on a flat release, and I'm going to say I went at about 90%. I could not throw full power. I straight up tried to throw full power, and they're flipping into rollers. So I had to reduce the power a little bit. Here's a flat release with the Orbit, and you can see it was a little bit more stable in that case as long as those releases were about the same. Here we have an Anhyzer release. We're going Opto first and putting a whole bunch of air underneath of it. Probably throwing at about 70%. I tried to throw an Anhyzer warming up and threw it into a roller, so I wanted to take a little bit off of it and definitely try to get the same release. You can see the Orbit came back and faded a little bit harder, also as indicated by where they ended up. The Orbit flew a little bit further, so faded out and continued. Now I'm going to try some distance shots here. Now this was a little bit tricky. I'm putting these on, you'll see the release is on a pretty extreme heiser, and it snaps up and all the way over. And again, I couldn't put my full power on it, which isn't much. This one got out there to 384. And trying to get the same release on the Orbit here. And it faded back a little bit sooner, and as a result it was a little bit shorter at 371. My full power throws on a disc that can handle my power like 55, 60 miles an hour, I can usually get out there to about 400 feet. So we're going to go for a second distance shot. This time I'm going to continue to put more heiser on it. And I'm going to try to give it a little bit more height and maybe about 10% more power. And you can see this one wants to get up and get over, but it does eventually, because of that wide rim and that speed, it does eventually fade back, and got that one out to about 397. That was the Opto. And this is going to be the orbit. Same deal here. Probably throwing these at like 85-90%, getting that extra height so they do fade back, and you can see where they landed there. Orbit definitely is slightly more stable than the Opto. The Opto was a 173 and the Orbits were both 176s. Here we have a forehand heiser. This is kind of my forehand warm-up shot here, trying to get it to maybe 260 feet. And because of that wide rim and speed, can actually get a pretty good flick on these, as long as you can keep it down. Really, you got to get a heiser release on the flick with this type of disc. Here I'm going to go for a full forehand flex shot. That means I'm going to try to release it flat, give it some height, and have it get over and try to fade it back. And I did have to experiment a little bit with this. Probably throwing my forehand here at like 70 to 80%. It wouldn't take a full 100% on a forehand flex. It would go all the way over to a forehand roller or a thrower. And my last ones here, I just tried to put some heiser on it and a little bit more heat. And you can see I get it over a little bit, but it does fade back with that, speed 13 stability as it slows down. And here is the orbit, definitely showing its stability. Overall, these are really nice distance drivers. I'm not sure, I feel like I could put just as much on an escape and probably get it just as far, or even a saint, if you will. But definitely a fun review to do. The Orbit is definitely slightly more stable, just slightly more stable than the Opto. I appreciate you watching this review comparison. Share it out if you need to, and I will see you on the next one.